Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics, and as Kemi Badenoch walks the Conservative Party conference for her first as party leader, Robert Jenrick has already made his move to ensure it will be her last. Reports on the eve of the conference suggest his closest allies have already prepared their own letters to trigger a confidence vote for the start of next month. Badenoch is clearly failing. This weekend, she swept aside the last remaining differences in policy between the Conservatives and Reform UK, and yet none of this direction of travel has helped her close the gap with Farage's party. In fact, it just keeps widening. The more the Tories ape reform, the more votes they lose to them. In this video, I'll try to explain exactly why that is, but also why I don't think the Conservatives are even capable of any other way. And actually, at this point, they may as well replace her with Jenrick, so he can finally kill off one of the oldest political parties in human history. But first, for daily news and politics, please click the subscribe button to stay notified. So, in 4 weeks' time, Kemi Badenoch will have been Conservative Party leader for a full year. YouGov, my go-to pollster for these things, were not being commissioned for any voting intention polls at that time, last November, so the first one they published since she took over as leader was this January. But at that time, the Conservatives were 3 points behind Reform UK. The most recent poll has the Conservatives 13 points behind. So her strategy is failing. But why? Well, under Rishi Sunak, the Conservatives made little effort to distinguish themselves from Reform UK on policy. There were differences, but they didn't really emphasise them. Sunak's strategic approach was to basically say, look, all those Reform UK types, they're really nice and all, but they can't win power. We're the pragmatic vote, which was true, but not anymore. Badenoch has two massive problems with adopting the same basic approach. The first is that the Tories have provably failed to make people's lives better. Reform UK, being a bit of a mystery box for many voters, do not have a track record of success, but neither do the Tories. So they're level pegging there. Tories and Reform UK, neither of them can demonstrate competence. But Reform UK do not have a track record of failure either, unlike the Tories. I mean, come the next election, they will do at local level, but not at national level. And the second problem is that polling very much says that Reform UK are now the pragmatic choice for voters caught between the two parties. Badenoch has tried to lean into the idea of covering the ground Reform UK cover to basically say to those voters, look, we're going to basically do the same thing, but we're the ones who can win, right? They can't. Can't possibly work. It's a bad idea from the start. She has acknowledged herself that her party is now associated with failure, and Reform UK is not. But from the moment Reform UK went ahead of the Tories in the polls, which happened, before Badenoch really took over, she could not even make that claim, as Sunak could, that the Tories were the credible vote for actually affecting change, for winning power. Right now, the poll says that if any party on the right is going to form a government at the next election, it's Reform UK. The Tories might at best be a junior coalition partner. However, if Badenoch's strategy was to accept this trajectory, she would at least be more openly appealing to the sort of seats her party can target but Reform UK cannot. But she's specifically adopted policies designed to appeal to the voters in the seats they're fighting Reform UK for, and that are actively off-putting to like the small C Conservatives in the winnable seats. I mean, that's mad. And with her insistence that the Tories are now abandoning things like net zero and the European Convention on Human Rights, she's basically handed the Lib Dems the golden chance to take even more Tory seats at the next election. So given that Badenoch has left her party in a much worse polling position than she began, and strategically, should the Tories just bin her and get someone else? Well, up until recently, I'd been saying I didn't think they'd be wise just yet. I mean, it would make no sense to go into the next election with her, but just hold on for a bit. Yes, Badenoch is a disaster, but the favourite to succeed her is Robert Jenrick. He will be just as bad. I mean, what is Jenrick actually proposing to do differently to Badenoch? Apart from changing the skin colour and genitalia of the party leader, nothing. I mean, it was the case that he was in favour of leaving the ECHR, for example, but now that Badenoch said that as well, no difference. So is there any point in the Tories replacing her at this point? Well, ordinarily no, unless it was for a leader who would go in a different direction. or be at least better in front of a camera. But it's not even like Robert Jenrick can basically be a Kemi Badenoch clone who comes across better in interviews. He's just as bad at those. I mean, in terms of different direction, you might think James Cleverly, but I no longer get the feeling the Tories are two camps. I'm detecting no pushback from within the party against Badenoch's plan to mimic Reform UK. There hasn't been any argy-bargy at all. I mean, we've seen plenty of argy-bargy in Labour when Starmer has taken them in certain directions, haven't we? Where is it in the Conservatives? Even like you don't expect it to be as open because the right wing are very good at public shows of unity. But you would see something in the Tory press. You would see some signs of off the record disquiet. I haven't seen none of it. So I no longer think this is just a strategic error on Badenoch's part. I think this is what the party is now, or what it thinks it needs to be. And that being the case, it might be better to get rid of her sooner rather than later, let Jenrick fail and give themselves time to reflect on their direction before the next election. Because something they should really be reflecting on is this. On the right wing, there's now a vacuum which didn't exist before. If we look at the political compass again, I've discussed this in the past, people get politics wrong. It's not a left-right one-dimensional line. It's a two-dimensional grid. Left and right is about economic policies, but then there are social policies which are different, liberal and conservative. Now, as I've discussed in the past, there was always a gap on the left. There's a large number of people in Britain who are left-wing. That is, they want to see strong government regulation, good public services, stuff like that. But they're also socially conservative. They want tough law and order. They want tight controls on immigration. They're not keen on multiculturalism. These voters have never had a party that represents both facets of them. So they faced a choice. They could either prioritise their workers' rights and public services, voting Labour, or they could prioritise their desire to shit on others and vote Conservative. But Reform UK have given many of these people the belief that they represent them. Hence why Labour have been moving into more conservatively social policies, basically, to counter them. But Reform UK are not left-wing Conservative. They're very definitely right-wing. So the gap still exists. There's just a bit of a mirage over there. But there is a new genuine gap opening up on the right. The Conservatives have always been socially conservative, of course, clues in the name. But there was always a nod towards liberalisation as well. So liberal Conservatives supported the party. I know that's a contradiction in term. Liberal Tories, maybe I should say. I mean, remember back when David Cameron took over, he leaned into these voters to get his party ready for power again. You know, he pushed the idea of renewable energy being great, of being kind to people, hug a hoodie and all that, instead of demonising groups that Tories traditionally demonise. It was all lies, conveniently dropped once he won power, but he understood the need to appeal to those voters. But where do those moderate Conservatives go now? Some will carry on voting Tory out of lifelong habit, I suppose. Some may prioritise their liberal views and back the Lib Dems, but they won't be happy with the economic policy. Those who decide to prioritise the economic policy, they're stuck, aren't they? Because the Conservatives and Reform UK are now identical. One's got a bad track record and one hasn't, but they're both identical in terms of policies now. So which one do you back if you're going to prioritise economic policy? It's a toss-up, isn't it? So how does doing this help the Conservatives? Also, these voters are used to voting for a party which is challenging for government. You know, I've said that the Lib Dems could encroach into this vacuum, but they probably won't. It would require a fundamental rethink of their strategy. And, you know, quite reasonably, they may think, well, why would we do that? We're in a good position at the moment. So what Badenoch has tried to do, and Jenrick will be the same, is chase after the reform votes, hope they can take for granted those moderate Conservative votes, because they'll have nowhere else to go. But polling evidence suggests that they cannot assume that because quite a few of them have already gone to the Lib Dems. So the best thing for the Conservatives right now is probably to bin Badenoch, get Jenrick in. Not because he'll be better, but because until it happens, Jenrick is going to carry on insisting that he's got all the answers, even though he doesn't have a single change of either policy or strategy in mind. But if you're going to do something stupid, you may as well do it early, give yourself plenty of evaluation time to critically consider your many repeated brain farts. It's a bit like having Tourette's, isn't it? People with Tourette's sort of say, you know, when they can feel a tic going, sometimes they just let it go. It's like, okay, it's going to happen. I can't do anything about it. Let's try and channel it. Do the same thing here. If it's going to happen, if Jenrick's going to get his shot, give him early so you've got time to recover from him later. I mean, at this point, if I were a Tory MP and wanted my party to start behaving a bit more intelligently, I'd probably just put a letter in now and get it over with. Because the worst thing would be for this to drag on. The report suggests a dozen letters will be ready to go in November 3rd. Now, since the rule changes, they're going to need about 36 letters in total. So if some MPs make it known that their letters are in, then until that threshold is reached, you're just going to get constant headlines speculating about how close it all is. Badenoch is basically finished. It's just a case of whether Tories hold on longer in the hope that someone less shit than Robert Jenrick can come along. But in the meantime, Badenoch's leadership will be undermined by headlines about confidence letters, and she will continue to react by doing the opposite of sound strategy. If the Tories are determined to actually destroy their party completely, let them get on with it. But let me know what you think in the comments below. For more content, you could subscribe to the channel or even join for access to streams and behind the scenes updates. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.